Welcome to That RPG podcast, where every great adventure starts with a single idea. I'm DQ, your friendly neighborhood GM.
I'm Courtney, a true patriot.
And I'm Johnny Law, and I live to tread.
For today's adventure hook, an old-time friend of ours named Seafish has given us an adventure that reads as follows. A friend or ally was murdered under mysterious circumstances, and our heroes need to figure out why before it's too late. Seafish has given us 3 tenets to work with. The first one is that travel between notable locations takes a long time. I'm thinking several years to decades at minimum, long enough that after a round trip, things will have changed drastically. The second tenet is that those notable locations wildly differ and are inhabited by wildly differing peoples. And the third one, beings of vast power roam the vaster spaces between. Now, first of all, Seafish, I really want to applaud you in this lovely way you've written these tenets. They're very compelling. And normally I would just take a step back and say, well, what do you guys think? But this one, I just want to add one thing, because I think this is screaming this. This is screaming that it needs to be
In space!
In space!
Sci-fi, yeah!
Now, to be fair, OSR Plus is not designed for sci-fi. Not yet. We do want to make a sci-fi version of this. We have run games that are sci-fi-ish, but it's not, the system is not ideal rules-wise for this. So we're going to speak to it, not necessarily using OSR Plus methodology, not that we do in adventure hooks anyway. I just want to put that caution out there, because if you can run a sci-fi game in OSR Plus, but it's not going to be right, because you need different mechanics for a sci-fi game, in my opinion.
I will say, yes, space definitely makes the most sense, but I could see this working in like an astral realm kind of game where you're traveling between planes or traveling in some like dream state that takes years and years to get anywhere, that sort of thing.
I mean, we could totally run with that too. Like, my first thought is it's definitely not some kind of mundane adventure over land.
Porque no los dos.
Yeah, we could do Spelljammer.
Yeah, why not have and I think that's part of the beings of vast power roam the vast space in between. Like, I like the idea of, if you try to shortcut, then you're doing kind of going back to Dune. Like, you have these interdimensional beings that you're now treading
Warhammer
on.
40K
kind of situation. Yeah, Warhammer. Yeah. You basically have to cut through hell.
Okay, so let's say then that this is a Spelljammer-adjacent kind of adventure, or a Planescape-adjacent adventure. So, we're traveling through this vast expanse of an astral veil or interplanar realm.
I like alt sci-fi. So it's not because I like to have some real world physics involved, or concepts, scientific concepts, but also then this fantastic elements that are obviously not real.
We know that so Planescape and some of the early D&D, even before that, the early sci fantasy adventures were inspired by the concept of the ether, before we had sort of Einsteinian view of the universe, that light permeates through this ether in space. And so we could posit something like that, so we can make our own sort of rules around it. So maybe the space between worlds has this ether, just like Spelljammer. That's what we use to travel through it.
But once again, though, this is adventure hook. This isn't world building, so we don't want to get too far into that. I want to leave that as an option background.
So we know the genre. We know that we're doing something. I don't want to say it's sci-fi fantasy, because I don't really think that's the genre, but we're doing something. It sounds like a planetary romance, sort of like what Star Wars is, or a space opera, in the sense that it's got fantastical elements to it. Now we know the goal, right? There's been a murder under mysterious circumstances. They've got to figure out before it's too late. So I guess the question I would pose to you is, it seems like the scenario structure is a mystery, which is fun. We haven't really had one of those. But why is it before it's too late? And who was murdered? And I know the players will answer part of that, but what is the base setup here?
Yeah, I was thinking about what is too late and what that means. And it could be something as mundane as a statute of limitations. Maybe there's a galactic law that applies where murder investigations only occur up to a certain point, and then that's it. Or it could be something more like the murder was some plot to advance some other faction, and you have to figure out what exactly happens so that you can stop them before they gain too much power or something.
I was leaning towards cover up initially, that's why the person was murdered, and you need to figure out what they were covering up. before it's too late, before that comes to fruition.
So they're like maybe like a whistleblower or something. What they learned will help. And if it's not discovered soon enough, then the antagonist will.
And I think like the initial hook, the intro would be something, if we went that route, would be something like, hey, meet me at this location. I have something really important to tell you about. And when you meet up, they're dead. And that starts off the
I love that. So like the inciting incident is really the murder scene, and the players are the first to discover this before the police even get to it. I could even see not letting the officials learn about the murder is important
Yeah.
because they're corrupt. So you've got to cover up the cover up and then get to the murderer first.
just like in real life, the police are corrupt. Cool.
Yes,
Gotcha.
Yes.
right. So the overall goal for the players then is to sort out who caused the no, not necessarily figure out the murderer, but figure out what information was being covered up and expose it before it's too late. But how does this square though with the fact that travel takes so long? Because it seems urgency and travel are at odds here.
It's interplanetary.
Because it takes years or decades. I mean, is it that the threat when they say like before it's too late, the threat isn't like literally going to happen immediately, but before it's too late is if this isn't solved in the next 5 years or 10 years, everyone accept the situation. Like, because it seems like the meat of this adventure is in the travel.
Well, it seems like, well, from an OSR Plus standpoint, there's a lot of downtime or travel sequences that would happen between encounters and whatnot. Yeah. I think that maybe too late is more like the police catching up to you concept. Like there's a clock, that you can keep pushing back. So that would allow you to go and come back and forth, but you would have to like, you basically have to like do false trails or whatever. Like you have to like, lead them on a goose chase while you're trying to solve the mystery.
Yeah, I do like that, and with the travel distance being such a big component, like maybe just those moves that you make are super important to both your investigation and to covering your own tracks. Like I imagine that you're going to be doing a lot of research as characters, whether it's like listening in on intergalactic comms or talking with people on the ground or making contacts with people and using that information to decide where to go next, because I'm sure you would have like multiple leads, but certain places are more optimal to go than others, and or like you don't want to end up going to a dead end essentially, and then where you could get captured.
It sounds like the way I'm envisioning a Spelljammer themed Star Trek adventure, kind of, because of all these worlds and peoples you have to visit, right? So I can imagine, for example, there's maybe this is a utopian sort of government, and it's a little world building, but it's going to give us help with the archetypes. But like, imagine like a utopian kind of society that is interstellar in the Spelljammer sense, but this cover up has to do with corruption inside of that utopian society, and so the adventurers need to solve this problem quietly because it could upset the status quo of this being a utopia, and so, and whatever's going to be accomplished by this cover up could ruin everything in their utopia. And perhaps all of these federated worlds are part of that utopia that you're exploring.
Would you consider unique mechanics part of an adventure hook, or is that more part of world building?
I think that's definitely part of it.
I feel like there's two unique mechanics that are popping up in my head immediately, and one is the clock system. And I feel like it should be something that's a two-way. It's not just a countdown. It's something that the players can make moves to add more time, and that's the too late thing. And that's the idea that the utopia and the secret becoming unraveled and affecting this and causing collapse of society or whatever. Like I don't know. That's for the world building part. We're not going to get too much of that. The other thing though is I love this concept of the time, the traveling, that in that downtime they could either be creating something like story tags or maybe learning new skills. So like, it's going to be a 5-year journey. Like what is your character focusing on while they're in their stasis? And
Maybe you
like,
have
well,
more than one character.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept too. But I like that idea of like between these, when you're doing these montages or whatever, these travel sequences, that there's something that you can do to prepare yourself for the next possible challenge. And like, whether it's like learn a new language or skill or change your kit. Like
Each adventure could be a level. And so you correlate the journey to the perk they've earned each level as they move from section to section.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, that like this would be a type of game where you would level up pretty rapidly. Like each time you travel okay, here's a new level, like, and whatever you pick on that level has to correlate to what your character's actually doing and gaining experience in.
You had multiple characters, you could, if you want to really make this expansive, they could all be people who are part of this ship or this network of heroes that are trying to solve this problem in different places. So now you could have this clock that goes up and down, but you could choose which character you're focusing on and which part of the adventure as you move back and forth. If you wanted to have multiple character mechanic too.
When you come back to previously visited nodes, there has to be a lasting impact on your actions both there and elsewhere. Like I think that's a really cool concept of the whole thing.
Like maybe you go to a planet and they have a moral dilemma and you can choose to intervene and say introduce new technology that saves them from some peril, or you could choose to not let nature do its course. So next time you come back, maybe the GM rolls on a table of outcomes. And so if you save them, these outcomes happen. If you didn't save them, this outcomes happen. They may not be good or bad. It just depends on what
Yeah,
happens.
no, it just changes the narrative and changes how the future holds would be achieved or lost.
And changes how the inhabitants of that planet might interact with you, depending on if you helped them or kind of told them to fuck off, or if you introduced a new technology that initially seemed good that ended up leading to really bad things. Yeah.
You can see a success check kind of determining if you had success at cost, then maybe something is bad about what you did and you'll come back to that consequence. Um, yeah. So what about archetypes? 'Cause I think now we have enough cold to figure that out.
Uh Before that though, the beings of vast power, I would like to clear that out. And then with the other tenant, the notable, excuse me, the differ inhabitants, that I feel like that's the nodes, right? So we can leave that. But yeah, what are these beings of vast power before we get to archetypes, if you don't mind?
I mean, the easy way out, which I don't suggest, is it's maybe that the beings of vast power are a hint at the thing that could go wrong if this isn't solved. So like the space as you travel between these locations, these might be the encounters that you face that are these eldritch horrors or whatever they are, that the faction that's corrupt inside the government that you're trying to uncover will use in some way. That's the easy way out. That is obvious and might be simple, and the players could solve that. But that's one thought.
Yeah, like another way to look at it in a much more grounded way would just be major fleets of ships or something in different territories. Could have space pirates or reaver types, or I don't know, like Federation ships that had mutinied and are now doing their own thing. Like, I think you can interpret beings of vast power in different ways. But basically, the idea would just be space itself isn't necessarily just a blank void. Like, there's stuff happening in it all the time, which you could interact with during the downtime that you get as you're traveling.
And have encounters too, as well, whether it be like cases or actual fights. What if we combine the two? What if they you do a little bit of a uh, God, horrible, not horrible. It still scares me to say. Event Horizon. Like, what if there's other ships out there that have breached into these Eldritch territories and have now been corrupted? And that's like they used to be former citizens or military or even pirates, but now they're like super fucked up Eldritch spaceships.
I mean, that's kind of what you're suggesting with the sense of encountering ships that things have gone wrong in this space too. So that they don't have to be monsters; they can be all kinds of encounters that we find.
I could see it working out really well as like just random encounters that happen as you go between nodes. Like you have this big table of like on one end, maybe there's like an eldritch god that's going to try to devour your soul. And on the other, you have like a regular old, just, I don't know, crew of space pirates who might interact with you in different ways. And then everything in between. And that also leaves like a sense of mystery and danger to like every encounter, where if you encounter like a derelict ship or something, it's like, okay, is this ship that has this repeat emergency SOS signal, is it really just people in need of help? Is this from ages ago and we can go in and loot everything? Are there going to be eldritch zombie horrors on there that are going to eat our brains? Like,
That would be super cool. And this is why I so desperately so like just to be totally transparent, like I love sci-fi more than fantasy by like a large margin. Like if it's numbers, it'd be like 10 fantasy, 10, 2 fantasy, 10 sci-fi. So like having to work through fantasy to get to sci-fi is just a huge drag for me because I really want to make a sci-fi system. But I feel like fantasy is the more accessible thing that everyone can easily understand. And so I cannot wait to be able to run something like this. I would love to run a Star Trek game. I played Star Trek the RPG a long time ago, but I would love to play a Star Trek game with adventures where you go to different worlds and you explore and you talk to people and solve problems. That's like dream game for me.
I could see it being not a too difficult transition between the rules, but
You could do it, but I have a vision for what a sci-fi game could be like mechanically. All right, so archetypes. What sort of characters can we play? What sort of narrative roles are we filling? I mean, obviously, if you think of science or Star Trek, they're the sort of the archetypes tend to map to their functions in the ship. You've got like the very rational thinker who wants to be human and wants to understand emotion. Your Datas or your Spocks, right? You've got your security person who has some insecurity. You have your leader who always has moral dilemmas to face. Those are different kinds of archetypes. What do we think in the system?
with the talk of like the potential for eldritch beings out there, I feel like there has to be some sort of eldritch researcher or like xenobiologist or something to that effect. Like somebody who is kind of researching on the fringes, and maybe their theories are a little out there and people don't always believe them, but the stuff that they believe is actually out there, like your shirt says.
Yeah, truth. These are my favorite people.
I think like your engineer, your navigator, your security person, like I think that's all just kind of.
But those are all like those are kind of like classes, right? So we want to think narrative, like fringe sciences. I think ties into the setting.
I think similar to that, but in a different way. Someone with religious background that is not a religious nut, but someone that has like old texts and old ways and is trying to stick to that. Like I think more like Fifth Element, like that.
But it can also be very important culturally as you go from world to world. So maybe they're like anthropologists who have a focus in
They're like Unitarianism kind of concept, not like Christian fundamentalist or something like that. That's not what I was going for.
Yeah, I was gonna say like psychologist or something along those lines too, which could certainly tie into like a kind of cultural ambassador type.
Okay, so like a ambassadorial. Hey, what do you call it? Someone who's like a diplomat, sort of, but they have a religious bent. Like they're kind of, you said, like almost like a chaplain. They are like they can communicate with cultures that way. Yeah. So fringe scientists and the chaplain, those are opposites, which are good.
Could also be somebody who's very familiar with the actions that these space police would be taking on your trail, whether
Oh, like
they're
an ex.
whether
worker.
it's like an ex-cop or like a criminal, basically who knows the tactics and how to get around them.
So an outsider is what you're saying. Someone who's become an outsider, who was an insider, the former insider. So space cop, ex-space cop, or it could be like you said, someone who escaped from a prison barge in space and has seen things. So we got some
Ex-cop, which is basically just an ex-gang member. Yeah.
shady-
Can I have an ACAB like meter in this episode, just digging up every?
So that's 3.
I was thinking stowaway, like someone that shouldn't belong there necessarily.
Are they like the alien from another one of the weird worlds?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it could go any way whatsoever. Like if they were to have an archetype thing, it'd be able to like hide or blend in. Like they already have like a mechanical ability, but like I feel like it could be either someone who like a Luke Skywalker who dreams big and just get pulled into this, or it could be like an alien or a deserter from something else. But just that they find they're not part of this design crew.
There's like Simon and River from Firefly, like that kind of, yeah.
It could just be a friend of the person that was killed that was not related to any mission. So they were there. It could be their lover that is now
So the
left.
bystander, in a sense.
Yeah, a unlikely hero, bystander, stowaway. Yeah,
That makes sense. So we've got fringe scientists, we've got the chaplain, we have the insider, outsider, and then the bystander. Well, what about the? I mean, I guess the chaplain is kind of like an empath. So if we're thinking of like the prostitute character or even like the Betazoid in Star Trek, they would fill the chaplain's role, Sortoria. But we don't have a leader. So someone who is in charge of the investigation, like, oh, they need a detective, obviously. I mean, that could be one of the other roles, though.
but well, I mean, like the captain of the ship, the person who owns the ship that everyone's gonna be traveling on.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Like I think they could be pilot captain. They could just be captain. Like yeah, It's your Holden from The Expanse, which
Picard, Holden, the captain in Serenity, like they have their issues or making tough decisions.
we need the tech whiz. We need the person that has the engineer or the computer nerd or like someone that fits into the techie.
Navigator could also be an option.
So then I think we have all the archetypes we need. So then the last couple things, we haven't really defined an antagonist. We know the antagonist has something to do with this utopian society, if that's what we're accepting. And maybe it's the murderer, but do we need to define that, or is that something that might maybe the players construct it as we go? I don't know.
I think so because there's definitely an eldritch horror antagonist that might be like more of like the outside monster that the monster inside us. But then there should be definitely like the government antagonist that runs the cops and all that.
I could see like a Men in Black villain, a kind of CIA sort of agent who's part of a black ops part of this government that shouldn't exist, and they're the actual villain or their group. And you're functioning similarly in that you're a shadow faction that shouldn't be discovered trying to solve this problem, but they're also trying to solve a problem and they're against you. So I could see them popping up, in your adventures, agents of their group, the Men in Black kind of black ops characters, adjudicator adjacent.
Yeah, and we had talked about like preventing this info from being put out, but maybe it could also be the opposite where you want to be the whistleblower in the end. You want to, maybe it is just revealing this like black ops special group that has been working in the shadows the whole time, like wiping out political rivals and stuff.
Yeah. Maybe going to the worlds is about spreading the word. It could be that.
This is very much going back to The Expanse now. Like it's the proto molecule and the you do, man. You really do. And
I
you have
saw
to
only
watch
2 episodes. That was my problem. Yeah.
but without spoilers that the heroes that we're following directly, there's like a couple of different groups of people that sometimes converge or whatever that you follow. You bounce around between like Game of Thrones ish, that kind of storytelling. But the main ones that you're like, the Rossi is the name of the ship that they run, that they find out this conspiracy that involves something alien, and they can't, like, they're trying to tell the world, but they can't tell the whole world because then if they tell the whole world, then everyone's gonna go fucking nuts and just it's gonna be nuclear war. But then there's like corruption within the systems, so they don't know who to trust, and like it's a
Sounds
cool.
just like what we're doing.
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, it's definitely the Star Trek Firefly Expanse. This is like this prompt completely.
So where are we going on this adventure? What are our scenes? Other than obviously we have worlds, but like
Is this pretty serious tone?
I think it's I don't think it's comedy at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I could see like comedic moments to like bits of levity here and there, but overall,
But not like comedic worlds. Like
yeah, no.
you're not going to a planet where people's asses are their face or something.
I mean, you could probably have a fun world, but I think the tone is more neutral.
Well, how about that? How about there is one world? The society is nonsensical, like to our like it's just like it's it's kind of the the astral plane / Thor Ragnarok. Jeff Goldblum's like
Over the
weird,
top
wacky trash world.
world. I love the trash world. Okay, so we have one wacky world to get some levity to this adventure.
And I feel like that one would involve like learning their society and like translating it in a way. So you'd pretty much like doing an anthropological study so that you can actually interact with them.
And like adopting their absurd customs in order to honor them to be able to get their trust, which would be really funny. There's a lot of Star Trek episodes like that. That's
Maybe they're actually really harsh though too. I mean that was a Star Trek episode, right? Where there's like this utopian area, but like someone broke something, and they're like, "Oh, Wesley broke something."
That's great. So yeah, I would say obviously the scene of the murder, which would probably be in the inner room where you start, would be an investigative node. You have encounters as well. We've established random encounters, which are scenes unto themselves.
Yep. The capital planet.
Oh yeah, in the capital world. Probably when you first start off in your adventure, maybe that's how everyone starts in the capital world from different parts of it, and you get brought together in this montage.
I imagine like it would be very dangerous to travel back towards the capital world once you've left because of how everybody's after you.
As the die changes, that escalates in a different way. And maybe there's things that you actually maybe need supplies or contacts or something, so it becomes like, is it worth it?
Yeah, you can have some scenes, say, in the wacky worlds, you leave them with something to do, and it's gonna take several turns for them to solve it. So you go exploring, but you have to come back. But when you come back, the Capitol Police are there and they're searching for you. So it's gonna be much harder to get that resource back.
Yeah, I could see a mechanic almost like the board game Pandemic, where if you've never played it, there are cards for cities on the map, and you draw cards to see like which areas get infected first. And I could see something like that here, where you have like a galactic map, and maybe you, I don't know, roll on a table to see where the police go next, or like how far out they'll extend or something in any given amount of time.
I love that. We did that for a version of that in our haunted castle game, Quest of Queens, where in the background, as they were exploring the dungeon, I was rolling to move where the villains are. It didn't come into play as much, but that's a really neat mechanic because then even to the GM, it's about discovery. So we've got the capital worlds, the scene of the murder. We've got comedy planet. We have encounters, the variations in scenes when they return to them. What about like end scenes? Like
Well, I think we need a couple more locations with wildly varying people as per the tenant.
Yeah, that's true.
a world full of giant things. Like I'm talking extraordinarily giant. Like it's a super giant planet with crazy gravity, and these creatures are enormous.
I like that. Are they like, is it a civilized world or is it a wild world?
Maybe it's wild and these creatures like are in no way human, and so figuring out how to work with them is really hard, and while in space, pressurized spacesuits. Maybe like the aliens are like these giant nodules that grow out of the earth, and you've got to like go into the underworld and find the heart node to talk to it telepathically. That kind of weird shit.
All
Mhm.
right.
You're like a hive mind planet or something.
Yeah. When I think of alien worlds, like in Trek, the reason why all the aliens look human is because of budget. But if you have no budget, like in an RPG, let's do fucking weird shit.
On the other podcast that I'm on, World Built With Us, I have historically mentioned Octavia Butler a lot as somebody who writes really alien aliens. So bringing in something from her would be like a planet where the creatures want to use you as like reproductive entities, basically, to like implant eggs in you, or take some of your genetic material to build upon you or something like that.
Maybe that's the decision you have to make as players. Like,
Yeah.
let's bear this creature's reproductive
Ooh,
material in order to do the mission.
Yeah.
that could get really sticky situation. You might want to bring that up in session 0 just to make sure. Yeah. Or you can have, a world where their butts are on their face.
Have some Ferengi, if you want. I could see spy adventures on a world that has been controlled by the Capitol Police completely, and you've got to extract something, and maybe it's more familiar because of the Capitol Police.
I like a corporate world,
Yeah,
like
like it's
a
been taken over. I mean, and for them, Capitol Police and Utopia, they're not evil. Like we're talking about Utopia, right? So this world, it's just that you're undercover and exposing you to a problem. And I could see maybe there's a rebel faction there that doesn't like this Utopia, and you've got to somehow work with them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, using or, like, inciting rebellions as a way to distract from your path.
in this world though, the police aren't inherently evil. That's what you're telling me? Wow, fantasy. You can just come up with anything. It's
It's
amazing.
really fantastical, yeah.
It's too easy, right, for us to deal with a galactic oppressive galactic empire like a Star Wars. So if it was like a federation where they're all doing good things, but there's a shadow group in here, it's bad. Now allying with the rebels in this alien world might be a problem because they're actual terrorists and they actually want to cause harm for whatever reasons they think are good. But these are your utopian officials that you care about, and they may not be aware of the conspiracy. But if they're apprised of what you're doing, you're going to get arrested, even though what you're doing will save everyone. So you've got all these dilemmas to deal with. I think that's great.
We should have, like, a scene that has to do with the beings of vast power. Like, I know that we talked about random tables where you can roll, but maybe there's, like, one particular scene that we want to include, whether it's, like, an eldritch horror encounter or something very.
What if there's a floating node that's like a rip, like an eldritch rip, so that could kind of like pop up and you get like either invaded or pulled into it or something? I mean, it doesn't even have to be a fight encounter. It could be like a just a test, sanity
A
test thing.
chase, a chase, because you get pulled in, you got to escape, and it makes you realize what's at stake. So if we feel good about this, are we prepared to flip up?
Yeah, do we got enough planet ideas?
I think so. So what do we got? We have like Capital. I'll never remember. I'll never be able to remember them all. Capital World, the scene of the murder, Comedy Planet, Weird Giant Planet, full of hive mind, the Rip in Space, the Capital World that's been controlled by the police is Utopia, but has rebel fighters that you're trying to align with so that you can stop it from falling into chaos. Um, You've got random encounters in space with mundane to eldritch things. What did I miss? Butt Planet, Butthead Planet.
No, that was throwing that out. But I like the human host planet, but it's like a consensual thing.
Symbiosis. Yeah, symbiote breeding. Messed up.
Basically, like difficult decisions, the planet.
Sophie's Choice, the planet. Wildly differing people. I just want to make sure because since it was a tenet that we actually were.
I mean, I could see planets where you encounter them and they would be great candidates for being part of the Federation, but their views are wildly different. You'd have a lot of cases where if your chaplain, I imagine, might be someone like was it the arbitrator, who really respects cultural difference, which could be at odds with unifying these planets under one utopian system. Because if, say, in Baby Eating Planet, eating 9 out of 10 babies is acceptable because that's how they keep population down, you may be like, well, that's really bad. We can't let this happen. But then at the same time, the chaplain's like, well, this isn't our planet. We can't intervene. So you create moral dilemmas that way.
I could also see there being some blank slate planets that you have as a GM that you let the players create. And you'll know what the purpose is of that, or what hold or what segue or hook it might have, but they would let them do it either in session 0 or in game.
I think in session 0 it'd be critical for the help the players build a bunch of worlds and use tables to add prompts so that as they build the worlds, they're getting given a prompt. That then is really cool because now your adventure has been generated in session 0. You created all the scenes that you then flesh out as a GM, so you don't have to think of 30 worlds.
Yeah, this is making me think of the Bloodlines game that our friend Rob ran, where our session 0, he basically laid out like a hex grid paper, and we rolled dice on it to see where settlements would be and what the terrain around them would be, and that totally shaped how we thought of things. Like we went into it totally blank slate, and then our like home city ended up just being surrounded by swamps, so we became like the gross swamp people. And then there was like city north of us that we started to call Eagleton because it was just like bright and cheery, and we're like the shitty swamp people from
Your the Pawnee
yeah,
swamp people.
exactly. Yeah,
I feel like that was my favorite game that Rob ran because of that interactivity part of it. And shout out to Rob because his prototyping of figuring out what was happening on that map that we made over time became the basis for me to develop overworld play. Because I thought, oh, what if we take, because he had a very simple kind of just D6 to decide things kind of randomly. But that map, it was the first time I'm like, oh, we can play the world itself separate from our characters. And that was like a prototype of that, I feel like. So are you prepared to blow up our utopia?
yes, let's do it.
So we need a D4 to decide how we're blowing it up.
1.
Oh, so this is our monster. Now we had that last time. Do we want to do that again?
I think we can't fudge dice.
That's true. We cannot fudge the dice. Love it. So just to recap, in terms of the adventure style, we have our structure. I think this is a mystery. So that means that when you construct it as a GM, if you're following the node-based scenario design by Justin Alexander, my personal hero, you would probably want to use the 3-clue rule, which is an article he wrote and is the basis of the way you structure this. And that as you're seeding the clues of the mystery, each world is functioning as a scene, the world should yield at least 3 clues that help you draw conclusions about the mystery. And so that's what the 3-clue rule is. Your players are going to miss 2 of them, but they'll pick up on the 1. So over time, and we have a video where we talk through this as a workshop. Over time, they're going to be able to put the mystery together as they explore more and more nodes. So that's our adventure structure. We're not changing the structure, but I always want to talk about what our structure is. So for our monster, let me open up my bestiary, which is growing there. All right, so I'm on 179 of, now it's 322 because I added 7 more. Well, because plants was one entry, but really it's 7.
4.
4. So a worm, a comma, dune.
Well,
Or
there we go.
is dune. So a dune worm of some kind. And this is WYRM. So it's almost draconic in nature.
I'm thinking of like, since we've got this eldritch stuff and we're talking about like tears in space, and what if it's like a wormhole kind of in space thing where this thing can just like pop up at random?
And it makes sense why travel takes so long, because they can't use shortcuts because of the dune worm. And worms, what do? They poke holes in the ground to keep the ground
It's just
fertile.
time and space, and that's this beings of vast power roam the vaster spaces between. That's your worms.
And the worm, I assume, maybe it's not evil in a traditional sense. It does something in terms of space and physics that makes sense, but it's just bad for us.
Yeah. Yeah, like maybe it does warp physics dramatically when it pops up. I don't know like what exactly that would look like, but I could imagine it having really, really weird effects.
It could have cool wagers though too. That if you're like kind of in the same sense of like Dune, like where they actually take the power of the worm, but like maybe if there's some way to avoid it, you can use its wormhole to change your clock.
And to speed things up to get faster is just risky. I mean, it makes me think then, and this is a tad bit of thinking about how the world is constructed, but it could be that the villains, or the CIA kind of black ops people, they know about this technology and they want to use and create wormholes. That's what they're after. We know that the use of wormholes is going to unleash eldritch horrors upon the world and has all these negative consequences. Their experimentation is to see, can they make a stable wormhole potentially.
Maybe that's the conspiracy, is that they have a worm in captive, or they somehow have controlled a worm, but it's not stable, the concept, and that's it could open up a whole new era in humanity, or it could destroy the entire world.
And so, like the villain, like the Black Ops think it's valuable because this could solve all of their final economic problems. The problem is space itself.
Because yeah, it would open up like immediate travel anywhere. Like, and that could, in theory, be a good thing if you have a planet that's going through a huge famine and you need to get food to them right away. Then yeah, like that would be a good thing to be able to use it.
I
But
know how to play this.
Oh, I got a great tagline too. This is just coming right off the top of my head. He who controls the worm controls the universe.
Very original. I like
Right?
it. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know
It's
where
good.
I don't know where I get these things. They just sometimes just pop in my head. It's cool.
Impressive. Yeah.
Swiss we dealt with, it just fit right in. The little worm fit right in there.
See, that's why you don't fudge dice.
Don't fudge dice. If we had fudged the dice, we would never have had a Dune worm. We would never have had the solution to our Black Ops group. Look at that, kids.
Good job. High five, everybody.
You can follow us at OSR Plus on YouTube or join our Discord at osrplus.com. If you want to support us, visit our Patreon, patreon.com/OSR Plus for early access to our content and premium access to our digital tools. This is the part where you say inane banter.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
And eventually I'll put up the chevron that says like and subscribe as you say things that are bad. John usually attacks fascist institutions.
Mhm.
Courtney says something disgusting that we're very upset, like those frogs from last time.
Toads. Yes.
Yeah, we're not. Can we stop talking about those? Like, I need the like how in a thread you'll add extra gifs to get away from that one gif. That's
I never looked at it. I never will.
Save your brain. Yeah.
Well, imagine a world. Okay, so the world where you have to get impregnated, it's those frog monsters. And you have to grow it on your back. 100 of the frog babies. You can't get the clues you need.
oh.
You have to deal with them like wriggling around inside of you. Yeah.
They're like squishy, but huge. Like they might be. Oh.
I'm gone.